Welcome to NCPD Live. Rooted in gospel values that affirm the dignity of every person, the National Catholic Partnership, NCPD, works collaboratively to ensure meaningful participation of people with disabilities in all aspects of the church and society. I'm Charlene Katra, Executive Director of NCPD. We have a guest with us today that's going to greatly enlighten us on the topic of Minority Mental Health Month, which is the month of July. Claire Wilshinet has worked in the healthcare as a healthcare professional for over 45 years, advocating for individuals with mental and physical disabilities, and for them to live with dignity, fully functioning, participating, and contributing members of our community. Claire now works with many nonprofit organizations in Houston, Texas, assisting individuals diagnosed with mental illness and intellectual and developmental disabilities in the employment arena. She remains an advocate coordinating at her parish, Our Mother of Mercy Catholic Church, the mental health ecumenical ministry, which she began there in recent years, providing free mental health education classes, support group meetings, and community outreach for those impacted by mental illness, including the diagnosed, family members, and the larger community of churches in Northeast Houston. I have worked with Claire when I was in Houston not too long ago in my previous position at the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston. And she was an asset to us, and she continues to be an asset to us now, serving on our Council on Mental Illness for NCPD. Claire, welcome.
Thank you.
It's so good to have you with us. Again, I consider you a dear friend, and so I appreciate your time.
Well, I miss picking on you. You're not as reachable as you used to be.
I know, unfortunately.
Thank you.
I'm glad to connect again today, especially on Facebook Live. I wanted to ask you about Minority Mental Health Month because you were the first one that educated me about that, and our Council on Mental Illness, that this month of July was designated as such. I wanted to just start by asking you to tell us, how did that come to be? Because the story is very interesting that you shared with us.
Well, we've been celebrating Minority Mental Health Awareness Month for 12 years now. And the Congress of the United States actually designated the month of July as B.B. Moore Campbell Mental Health Awareness Month. And her story is very interesting. She's an author, a journalist. She worked as a school teacher, but she's had a lived experience with mental health issues. Her first book about mental illness was a child's book that she wrote about When Your Mother Gets Angry. She's never really acknowledged whether this was the story about herself or about talking about what she experienced with her mother. She has a daughter that was diagnosed as bipolar, and she also, this book got everything started, a book on 72 hours. But let me back up about BB. BB has always tackled stuff in the African-American community. Her books always talk about things for self-actualization and the duality of what Blacks experience here in America. Her first book, which is the most acclaimed book that she's had, it started with Ain't Nobody Blues Like Mine. It talks about what happened after the Emmett Till's murder in 1955. What made her write the book was later on when the individual, I think her name is Bryant, the Caucasian woman, finally acknowledged that the information that she told that led to his death was incorrect. The only thing he did, the Emmett Till was 14 years old. He came from Chicago to visit relatives in Mississippi. And in Chicago, he was used to speaking to everybody when he entered the store. He spoke to her in the store, and she was not accustomed to a Black man or a Black child speaking to her. So she told her husband and her brother that he spoke to her and said some obscene things to her. And that night, they stole him from his cousin's house. They beat him up, they shot him, and they put him in the water for 3 days before his body was discovered. And then the brother and the brother-in-law were actually tried for the crime. They, of course, got off. And then they later on in 1956 went on to what was Life magazine. They were interviewed and they acknowledged that they killed Emmett Till. But because of double jeopardy, nothing ever happened to him. So this was very frustrating. And what actually made her write about this, and it's fictitious characters, but it's the whole story, was that when Brian came out and acknowledged that she recanted her story. And what was so incredible, just like what's going on with Floyd now, Emmett Till was the icon for the civil rights movement then, because what actually his mother refused to have a closed casket. And when they buried him, everyone was able to see what actually happened to him. So it's so her anger about this, and her anger was she felt when she along with her friend Lyndon Boyd started NAMI Inglewood, which is, I think, right now, urban Los Angeles NAMI. She was trying to get help for her daughter. She went back and forth. Her daughter is a TV star. She was on a show that lasted probably about 3 seasons, but has not ever rebounded up and down with her mental illness. And she went back and forth to try to get help. The book that talks about that is 72 Hour Hole. She could never get people to listen. They wanted to diagnose, as they did when I started in mental health almost 50 years ago. Blacks could not get the diagnosis of bipolar. It was called manic depressive at that time. The only diagnosis we could get was schizophrenia. And they were treating her with schizophrenic drugs. And she did not have a thought disorder where she needed to take the medication. And it really made her feel bad. And what happened is that she kept getting sicker and sicker, And so
medicine is great if you get the right medicine. But if you're, again, like you said, medicine can do more harm, like in her case.
Well, that's going to be another tangent for another day for me to talk about.
Exactly.
They decide what medicines and who they test them on and why we take those and cause problems. But anyway, she couldn't get it. And so she was frustrated. And when she started NAMI, what she did was galvanized her community. And they started this task force and they petitioned the United States to do something about it. And then finally in, 2008, that they declared the month. And it was supposed to bring recognition to the disparities what's happening for minorities with mental health, as well as just bringing attention to mental health on its own.
But this was 2008, Claire? Is that when it was?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And really the first organization that NAMI does a lot, because NAMI, she was part of NAMI, but Mental Health America started the first celebration. Okay. And since then, it's no longer called, it's still Minority Mental Health Month, but we don't say marginal or disadvantaged communities as used to be. As we grow, the terminology changes. So it's
language changes. I was going to ask you also I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. Go ahead. I'll come back to
it. Now we celebrate Minority Mental Health Month, but we talk about Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So BIPOC month is what it is now.
I think what I wanted to interject, if you don't mind, is just you're referring to NAMI, and if anyone listening is not familiar, the acronym NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. So it's a fabulous national secular resource that we want people to know about. And clearly, you're telling us that this person we're speaking about now was instrumental in starting it, which is amazing to know too.
That she started the NAMI in Inglewood, and NAMI is a grassroots organization. So she went to them, she learned, and she was able to get education and resources and to bring those to her community. And she found out that we've got to stop the gap.
Right. And talk to us a little bit, Claire, please, about the stigma. So the reasons why we celebrate these days and hold them up is to, part of it is raise awareness, but to help.
It's always been a stigma with mental illness, and it's been a bigger stigma. She has a wonderful quote, and it talks about, we live in a race-conscious country, and if you already you've seen with a deficiency, why would you tell and have another one? And so for Blacks and for people of color, it's been hard to go out and say they need help in this. Mm-hmm. And when we do go out to get help, we might not describe our symptoms the same. We go with a lot of physical symptoms and somatic symptoms, and I do think that contributes to the diagnosis, but then it does not stop the doctor from answering more questions about it. I really want to tell you about my experience as being a mental health professional.
Please.
We had at one time, before HIPAA and everything, we used to have what they call groups. When I started, I had just completed my master's, and we would have 8 people in a group at a time. And the doctor would see them, and they would go one-to-one and ask questions. And the doctor was just filling up the time. I remember one doctor that I almost lost my job behind. He had a woman came in and she couldn't, she was complaining of not being able to sleep at night, how she felt worried all the time and anxious. And the doctor said to her, now this is a lady that worked as a domestic, said to her, I want you to get your toothbrush out. And I want you to take your toothbrush and scrub your entire kitchen floor. And when you finish, you should be able to sleep. Mm. And that just, that blew my mind.
Right.
For a medical professional to say that too. And I questioned the doctor after that. And I said, this lady works all day as a domestic, and you're telling, well, he said, well, most of, and he made the complaint, I've always worn my hair in some kind of Afrocentric style, Afro, 3 trans, twin, thick braids, and now I have the sister locks. And he said, well, he told me I was oversensitive, that Black people need to realize that most of us most of them with mental health problems are schizophrenic, and whatever we do for them is really not going to change that. So that's when it all started for me for real.
I bet it did. I mean, sounds extremely below par.
Well, of course, he didn't stay long at place. We had support and he moved on to another facility.
So that said, I mean, fast forward 50 years or less or so,
I
assume we're doing in a much better place as far as the training even of physicians in this field, correct?
But we still have a lack of culturally competent counselors, therapists to work with. One of the things is that when we present problems, and with other minorities, there's a language barrier. We talk a different way.
Okay.
And we are and African Americans, the stigma is so great from them because they're so secretive. When I was in Harris County Jail, that was part of my life as a mental health professional. I was in the jail for 8 years, and actually on the forensic unit, everybody was 90% minorities. And that was the first time they ever had mental health treatment. It's a known fact that minorities suffer for at least 10 years before they seek treatment. And right now, the Harris County Jail here in Houston is the largest provider of mental health services in the state and the second largest in the country. So that means that it's not accessible to us. It's not, and a lot of, we don't have the insurance. We can't get the private we can't get the private things to continue. And people see, well, you come from, let me tell you another incident. You come from, I went to the doctor. I was having a lot of problems gaining weight from a medication that I was taking at the time for another health condition. And he said, well, you come from a good stock. Your people from years and years have survived and everything. So you just have to get used to being the way you are. You don't need to complain about it. So we're dismissed.
Yes.
When we go and talk about things. And if you've had this to happen more than once, then you stop talking. And then families, just as I would think with everyone, there's been not understanding about mental illness. There's so much shame. And then family members are concerned about the shame and blame that'll out. They can't ask for accommodations on jobs to go see the doctor or anything, because once they find out, oh, this is a crazy Black person working here, we need to get rid of them. So ADA didn't help us get to be able to get help. So it's been going on and on. And right now, finally, we're talking about trauma. Stop me, Charlene, because I can skip around.
That's okay. I mean, you're covering a lot of things we wanted to talk about, and it's very interesting, Claire.
Well, besides the generational trauma, there's something that they're finally acknowledging, that there's internalized trauma. When so many things happen to you, even right now, for me, watching all the violence on TV, that provokes the trauma. You think about what causes, I truly believe that trauma has affected mental illness to the degree that it's caused a lot about racism in mental health services.
And to me, it's part and parcel of, why I keep saying, I think mental health, the focus on mental health has to be number one for us, not just in the world, but especially even in the church, more so because people come to the church for hope. They come to, have that spiritual support, and it's all the more reason the rest of us need to get educated across the board on this issue. I mean, considering what we're living coming out of this pandemic, it just seems like it's only going to be intensified more. So the needs are getting greater. You were talking a little bit about.
We're even blamed for our health conditions now, while we a large population of us have so many secondary issues, and it's causing us to die from the pandemic. Use the example of here in my city. I grew up in Fifth Ward. Fifth Ward is known right now for all that's happening with the cancer clusters, what happened with the railroad. For years, we did not know that we were not linked to the city water system, that we were getting well water that was used to clean the tires for the railroad. And now they see all the cancer clusters. Everything is built like that in our areas. And then they talk about the types of food we eat. Some of that is generational. We're learning to eat. To eat well, you have to have a little money. Because it costs more than we get what we can to feed the family. And some of those things are accustomed to us now. Mm-hmm. And we understand this. We're learning about it. We're changing. But we are always criticized for everything that we had no control over. I heard a man say, well, if you get when Tiger Woods won the opening, we're going to have greens and cornbread. Well, we didn't get the turnips. The turnips went to the big.
We may have just lost Claire. She kind of froze up on us, it looks like. Well, I'll give her a minute and see if she can reset on her end. Claire and I have talked ourselves even before about this whole fact of trauma and repeated traumas after trauma after trauma. And again, in the situation, like I said, we're living in now, it's just compounded. So whether it's relational situations, intergenerational, historical, again, the situation of some of the protests now that for especially Black community, and I've actually just moved in Maryland into a Black community, predominantly Black community, which I love so much. Oh, Claire, are you back? But I'm just saying, they're steeped in so much history that it does kind of bring it back. Of course, it would trigger memories and experiences from the past. You filled on us a little, so I filled in some gaps, but just talking about, my own.
We learn how to talk to people. We're not very open. We're not sharing. It was always taught to us. I'll use another example personally for me. I went to a program called Upward Bound. They would come, and it was for the brightest students in the school get an opportunity to have college experience before to encourage us to continue in education. Well, the name of the program, Upward Bound, it was a government program, but it was based on culturally deprived individuals. So they said to us that your culture is deprived. Who can say to someone that their culture is deprived? Yeah. But my mother understood, but it was the opportunity to get my first 7 hours of college pay. It was my opportunity to go to a college campus every weekend and make $5 for going. And that time, it was really a big deal. So, those kinds of things are trauma. The first thing that they did when they put us in the program, they took us to the biggest church on Main Street, and they exhibit all these Black kids. And if they knew anything about us, we've been to church. We go to church.
Grew up in it.
Yeah. And so, but my mother said it was an opportunity to get what you can, but not to forget who you are. The biggest thing for that, and then I went to spend a week on Rice University campus. I got to go to the World's Fair, the Hemisphere. So that was the trade-off. But most times I had to sit silently when someone else told me about me.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine, of course, but again, your experiences, like say, culturally are going to be different than mine and others. Yeah. But it's so important, and they're equally important, one to the next. If we could move beyond a lot of the stigma and a lot of the derogatory comments or subjective comments or broad generalizations that people make.
And it's on both sides. We've got to do that on both sides. We've got to turn our eyes inwardly, and until we can have open and honest conversations and not fear for what we say, then we can move toward healing. And for me, as a mental health professional, we were always taught that we're doing head work. Well, now we need to do healing, heart work.
Heart work, yeah.
Yeah.
Agree with you, Claire. Claire, this has been so interesting. Claire, are there any resources or additional information, especially on this?
There are a lot. There's a number of places. I don't know if you can see this. It's put out by the Counseling Center, and I'll make sure it has a lot of information on how to celebrate and what to do in Minority Mental Health Month. My favorite toolkit is this one that puts out, because it actually not only talks about the issues of how it got started and all these different things, it gives you a real great breakdown of racism in mental health services, racism in treatment, as well as a description, some workable definitions of what internal racism, what racial mental health is all about. And, even though the gap is closing, but it's still not there. It depends on where you are and what your resources are. Because of medical, we live in a country where it's not prevention oriented. It's more of management, crisis management, and people use their medical benefits to go for medical issues at the doctor. They suck up the other and they endure it. And it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. With what's going on right now, and for African Americans and learning to deal with their internal anger, that I've internalized for years, is what the conversation needs to be open to. And then the little jokes that we've always been told, my complexion because of the curse of Ham, in the book of Ham. And that, and they use this quite a bit here in the South, is the reason why Ham, the Lord deemed through the book of Ham that Africans were always supposed to be slaved and protected, and that we didn't have choice. And not with people not realizing that, when you go up into a counseling session, you bring your history in it. And oftentimes you don't look at your history when you're listening to what someone else is talking about, their needs and how they're feeling. We tend to think, well, you're saying this, but we don't ask, is this what you mean? We don't ever do any reflective things. We quickly write that down. We tell you need to do this and give you some medication.
Why do you think there's that hesitation to go this step further?
Well, there are many reasons. It's more costly. We, how it is, even if you got talk therapy, it's easier to get medication therapy. When I worked, you had so many, it's prescribed. You get so many sessions. After those sessions are over, then we have to let that person, get sick all the way together and start over again. Yeah. That does not make sense.
No, it doesn't. Everyone doesn't heal in the exact same amount.
There you go. There you go. And we can't put all the blame on one thing, because there are a lot of well-intentioned people. Just like I'm saying all of these things to you, that also says I bring something into every conversation, and whether it's fair or not, it's there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's on both sides of the table. That's why I say it's a lot of healing work. And I really see the church as to step up and be a safe haven for that healing. We've got to have acknowledgement. We also need to understand that I know since the symposium at St. Thomas, a number of churches have started a conversation. But the conversation needs a little.
Oh no, may have lost Claire again for a moment. I'm not sure. Hopefully we can get her back to finish that thought. Well, as you can tell, if we don't get Claire back, she's quite a blessing in the community here at NCPD on the Council for Mental Illness, and I know definitely in the Houston and surrounding area. She was the one that, when I was there through our disability steering committee, had me connected through the MD Anderson, hospitals, and many other organizations, NAMI, of course, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, many other organizations that she's so connected with there. And honestly, her entire family, a lot of her siblings are also in the healthcare field. Sorry, I was just filling some space waiting for you.
Yeah. I have to thank my son. He updated me. He gave me this iPad a little while back, but he didn't give me enough instructions on how to use it.
You've come back to us every time, so we're grateful. Maybe we should just take our good fortune at the moment. And thank you again so much for your time.
You know what? I want to thank you for the opportunity to express my thoughts. I want to thank the council for putting out their statement. I think I would have been so hurt if they would have not acknowledged it. You also acknowledged that there's work to be done, but you've got to start somewhere. And now that we're starting the conversation, that's the most important thing.
Right. And I think the statement you're speaking of, Claire, I assume is the one that just came out from our Ethics and Public Policy Committee on our statement on racism.
Right.
Correct.
And what it says is that it gave us an avenue to keep pushing what's next, and to hold you accountable for. You put it out there, so we're going to hold you accountable.
Oh, please do. Please do. And yes, if people are not familiar yet, again, go to ncpd.org. That's our website, of course, where you can find our statement on racism that just recently, we've just recently posted. This recording, just so you know, which we will have it professionally captioned, usually within about a day, and it will also be posted up via our website and our social media feeds. So again,
And one more thing, let me throw this in.
Sure.
I know that I talk a lot about mental health ministries, but I'm going to back up on that. I want to continue to talk about it, but we need to put another lens into what we do in terms of mental health ministry. We need to put the lens in talking about respect and treatment for all, and that will include the trauma and the racism and everything else. Because trauma is not just for Blacks and minorities.
Not at all. And again, even in the climate we're living in now, we've all been traumatized by 2020 on many levels right now, just for all that's going on with living in a pandemic, something we've never could have imagined. The other thing I was just going to say on that, because I've said it to other people, Claire, is the issue of racism in particular. What I have said recently a few times was that we can't just say, especially those who may be in today's current situation, if I'm not Black or African American, I can't just say it's somebody else's issue or concern. No, because what to me it sounds an awful lot like is what people often do and say about a lot of things. And from this seat I sit in now, a lot of people will say that about a person with a disability, whatever that disability is. Oh, that's not really our thing. It's not our concern. Somebody else will, Well, again, to me, they seem a lot alike of that. It's not my job kind of thing. And
of
we
course,
can't have that. It's everybody's job to care for everybody, especially if you're, in my opinion, a Catholic and or Christian. Again, we're one body. We need to love it.
Like we just need to start. I know there are a lot of things going on, but I would hope that we would just haphazardly say we're going to do something without we need some social and emotional learning going on. And I mean, seminaries all the way up. I want to say this. There are a lot of well-intentioned people on both sides of this, but well-intentioned sometimes causes more problems because we're not honest. We're not dealing with the situation, and we're just trying to keep a cover on it, and being polite with each other.
But sometimes it takes, I always heard it said, you can't just like rip a blanket off someone, if they're, when they're cold or something. It's a little shocking or startling. Sometimes those things have to be kind of done, maybe slowly, but nonetheless, I guess with just gentleness and compassion and empathy is all I'm saying.
Yeah,
we've
got to work on how to stop the series of internal racism on our end. And we can't say just being victimized and being vulnerable. This is happening to us. When are we going to take control? That's what I say to minorities. But here's the thing about it. It has to be in the room when we can really be able to talk openly and acknowledge what's happening.
Yeah. Pray for all.
I say all the time, when I walk in the room, what do you see first? You see my skin color. Second, you see I'm an old lady. And then everything, you see my age. I am a baby boomer. And then everything else follows after that. But that sticks with you. So those things are important.
There are things to think about, again, and how do you respond to the next person that walks in front of you and the next person. But to keep those questions, front and center in our minds and in our hearts, more importantly, I think is invaluable.
And we need to call things when things happen. I know that in my work profession, in order to move up and to do different things, that we end up playing a lot of games. We don't be forthcoming and stopping. We need to start a new language, just like we do in mental health first aid, and center around the person and not the illness that they have. We need to start talking in those terms. We're going to have to develop a language for this too.
Well, with your help, Claire, I think we're going to move forward. I truly do. I know you'll always be an advocate, and your passion is inspiring. So thank you again. Thank you for today.
For allowing me to express myself today.
Well, we're the grateful receivers. Thank you. I'm sure this will be very beneficial for everyone listening. God bless you, and we hope to visit with you again soon.
And again, I'm going to send a lot of resources that I hope that will be attached to minority mental health for resources for people to look at.
Sure.
And there are a number of just like they have mental health depression scales, and they have a lot of scales now that have been developed for you to even look at your own perspective when you talk to other people.
Absolutely.
And the racist and the trauma part of it that I am going to also attach.
Well, you keep making sure we get the resources, and we'll keep sharing them. So I just, again, thank you, and tell everyone to visit ncpd.org.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay.
God bless.
Bye.
Bye.